I don't think the manipulation of gold and silver in the West is going to end until the dollar ends.
Today, we're joined by our special guest, Mr. Pat Holland from the Missouri Freedom Initiative. We're going to talk about recent developments in the world, what that could mean for the silver price, the gold price. Of course, we'll even focus on the silver price halfway through this video, and we're going to talk about very important developments within the legislative movement that's going on across the country in many individual states to help citizens reclaim their right to use silver and gold as legal tender. Pat, welcome back to Ron's Basement.
Ron, thank you so much. It's been a minute and I missed you, buddy. I missed you so much. Look at this solidarity here. Red shirt. Look at this.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So, and 5 o'clock shadow. Yep. Normally I'm clean shaven. Look at this. So this is in honor of you, Ron, in solidarity, man. And also in support of anyone who has ever guest starred on Star Trek and been on an away mission. This is a forgotten demographic. I think we need to rope them in and bring them into the silver and gold network. And by the way, the gold bear and the platinum bear might need a red shirt too, because we're starting to get chilly in the mornings here in Missouri.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, the silver bear just whispered in my ear that Pat Holland gets better looking every time we see him. So,
oh boy, so he can't even see. So yeah, right. I'm not sure we can trust this.
Oh boy, I was just exposed. Okay, yeah. So I have a question for you, Pat.
Sure, buddy.
Seems like there's so much going on in the world. I have a real simple question for you. Are Americans asleep? And I ask you that question because last week we got major news, maybe one of the biggest news stories of the decade, maybe of the century, that the BRICS nations were expanding. They're adding expanding by 6 new countries. Big news story, including Saudi Arabia. And the reason I ask you, are Americans asleep, is because the next morning, I pulled up CNN to see what their coverage of this, just out of curiosity, was. They had zero coverage. As a matter of fact, they had like 4 stories detailing different aspects of Donald Trump's mugshot. I thought, it's no wonder Americans don't know what's going on. They're not getting the news. What's the significance of that? And what's the significance of what's going on with BRICS?
You bet. Okay, so let's start with the fact that what's happening in the BRIC nations is not getting exposure in the mainstream media. So let's start with that. Now, we could talk ad nauseum about censorship. We could, because that's a real problem we're dealing with in the Western world right now. And it's not just the United States. The censorship extends far beyond us. But the fact of the matter is, Saudi Arabia becoming, you're joining with the BRICS and actually integrating in with the BRICS is a big, big deal. And you're only going to get this information from the alternative media sources. Why is it a big deal? Because that's the country that heads up OPEC. And that's the oil producing nations. And Saudi Arabia is the head of OPEC for several reasons. But at the same time, people need to understand this is literally the end of the petrodollar. There's 2 names for the dollar outside the United States: the petrodollar and the world reserve currency. Both of those are inextricably linked. And it's because of our deal with Saudi Arabia, we really truly have this, even though we got it with the Bretton Woods Accords, that happened in I believe that was 1946, maybe?
44, I believe.
44? Okay, and that was in New Jersey. But that's because we had all the gold. That's the reason we got world reserve currency. How we kept it was through oil. So, gang, this is big news. This is something that I think surpasses anything that you're seeing now with the circus in Washington, D.C. This will affect all of us. This will affect the entire world. So be careful what you're consuming. Be careful on the time that you spend consuming media and news, because some of the biggest, most important stories are going by the mainstream media without mention.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I want to get your perspective on this. I think, me personally, I had no idea what the petrodollar really meant until maybe 2 years ago.
Sure.
And I think that 99 98% of my fellow Americans still don't understand the significance like you described. And I heard somebody describe it like this, that let's say just over the last 15, 20 years, let's look at China, for instance. China manufactured a lot of products, right, and shipped them to the United States. The United States paid them with dollars. China, once they got those dollars, would typically do one of two things. They would buy US treasuries, or they would use those dollars because oil and natural gas were traded exclusively in the
That's right.
petrodollar. They would use those dollars to buy oil because they're a big importer of energy. Now that's all been thrown out the window. And that previous arrangement allowed the United States to borrow money, right, at very low rates because there was demand for the treasuries. Now that's all been, is that a fair assessment of what's going on right
I
now?
think so. And also, I've made a prediction that this time next year that the printing press will be wide open. And I should probably amend that by saying if dollars aren't rushing back to the United States from overseas, because that itself will be a hyperinflationary event, as well. We can either print it ourselves or just take the dollars back that are literally floating around overseas. There's a lot of dollars in the system, Ron. I mean, you know this, and they are sloshing around looking for investment vehicles and opportunities. But the fact of the matter is, if the dollar's not wanted for oil anymore or not needed for oil, because OPEC has decided that they're going to take a basket of currencies instead of just the dollar, boy, howdy, is that going to change things for us in the United States. How you're going to know this is everything's just going to get more expensive. I mean, it's that simple.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, including myself, don't realize oil is the lifeblood of the world economy.
It is.
It is the blood of, I mean, it is everything, not just energy, but oil's, everywhere, right? Plastics.
Sure.
I mean, it is like everything. So this really is a seismic change that's going on. And we know, we know that the Saudis, we know that the UAE, they're becoming closer and, I mean, they're joining BRICS at this point. So what other demonstration do we need that they're now aligning themselves with China, with Russia, with India, for that matter, and what the implications will be for the U.S. dollar. But of course, we don't hear about it. We don't hear about it on Fox News. We don't hear about it on CNN, MSNBC, anything. People just, I think, are asleep and don't really understand what's going on. And let me ask you this question about silver and gold and platinum, any of the precious metals. Is there any scenario as you look at what's going on that's not favorable? I know you're not into making predictions for precious metals, but I mean, doesn't this seem to set up a favorable environment for silver, gold, and platinum for that matter?
It does, but also too, I'm 51 years old, and I have been into gold and silver for a long time. The manipulation never ends. Yes, we had a really big high back in 2011, and it did happen, and it came back down. But it turns out that was a manipulated high, and that was specifically that was before J.P. Morgan took over. What's the bank they took over when they failed? That actually was manipulating the futures.
Just recently?
No, they went under in 2008. But it was like, gosh darn it, Bear Stearns, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. So at any rate, so to go back and be more precise about your question, I don't think the manipulation of gold and silver in the West is going to end until the dollar ends, because that's how they do it, is through the dollar, through the power of the dollar. And I'm really sorry, I know this is going to strike a lot of folks the wrong way, that we're going to have some sort of victory on true cost, true value of gold and silver before the dollar ends. But I just don't see it coming, not in the West anyway. But watch the BRICS. The BRICS will use gold and silver somehow, or maybe it's just gold, and one more thing I want to throw out, and it's very important that people align with the thinking on this. Silver is incredibly important for industry. Gold is not. Now, gold's important for industry too, but nowhere near as much as silver. Silver may, pardon me, may never be monetized again, ever, in any country, because it's irreplaceable in many, many applications. So, go ahead.
Well, there's just some crazy statistics out there regarding silver. I
Mhm.
mean, and from some reliable sources, right? Like I read yesterday, I don't know, it was Saxo Bank or one of the big banks was saying we could run out of silver by the year 2035. Like the world could actually, if these projections for
Mhm.
solar and other things that are, developing in terms of the industrial needs for silver, that it's crazy the situation. And there aren't any mining companies exploring, very few exploration initiatives for silver, very few mines being developed for silver. There's not a pipeline of new silver coming online. I mean, it
Mhm.
could be an interesting scenario that unfolds here in the next 10 years.
You bet. And if you talk to miners,
Hmm.
exploration companies, even analysts like David Morgan,
Hmm.
they will tell you the same thing. All of them are in lockstep with Johnny on this.
Hmm.
Silver is manipulated so low, it is not worthwhile to explore for it.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, too, I meant actually above ground, on ground sources of silver um, for mining on land are drying up very quickly. I
Yeah.
suspect the next major move for mining silver is going to be in the oceans, and that
Yeah.
will dramatically increase the price because it's going
Yeah.
to be so expensive to do so. And that's if, of course, we need it for industry. Go ahead.
And I got to throw this in before I forget. And 30% of the world's silver now comes from Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Mexico's becoming very mining unfriendly. I can vouch
Yes, it
for
is.
that because I've had several of the companies that I own stock in have had major problems in Mexico. The other big key point is that a lot of the silver that we get now is a byproduct of copper mining,
Mm-hmm.
zinc mining, and lead mining. And I heard, Ross Beatty, who's a very well respected, executive in the precious metal sector. I've heard him as well as other top level people say that the new copper deposits that they're finding, right? The world needs all this copper. The world, so you would think, oh, well, when they open these new copper mines, they're going to get all the silver. Wrong, because the low hanging fruit copper that had been mined and is still being mined now has a lot of silver in it. The new copper deposits are deeper and there's hardly any silver coexisting with the copper. So really, I mean, I know you love silver. I love silver. Can we talk one more silver subject? And then I want
Absolutely.
our listeners who are with us to know we are going to do an update on the Missouri Freedom Initiative and the legislation. Pat's going to go
Mm-hmm.
into all that. But I got to ask you this question about silver, Pat, too, because you're a very smart guy, and I love to hear your insights. And I know that all the people with us love to hear them as well. When I think about the 1970s and silver, right? We know that silver had some spectacular gains during the 1970s. Went from like $1.30 or so all the way up to almost 50. I mean, like 35 times from low to high.
Mm-hmm.
What intrigues me is that it feels like we are in a similar situation now. Stagflation, geopolitical risk, the country's, our fiscal and monetary situation in the country. Like we're in a real similar situation right now, but I think could the argument even be made that we're even in a more extreme situation right now, and that the setup for silver potentially could be even better?
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. Those are good points, but I'm going to throw some more into it. In 1980, you had the Hunt brothers, actually starting to corner the silver market. They did nothing wrong. They did nothing illegal. They were seeing silver as an incredibly important asset. Now, fast forward and by the way, you're talking about silver at $50, right? So we almost hit that in 2011, but that was when the pig nations came up, Portugal, um, Germany, okay, Spain.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the I
With the eye.
nation. What's that?
India? Was it
It,
India? I don't. Or,
no, these were nations that were on the euro.
okay,
And so you're catching me early in the morning, Ron. My brain
that's
is
okay.
still needing
Hey, three out
coffee.
of four. 3 out of 4 is
Yep.
not bad, Pat.
Yep.
We
So,
don't have teleprompters to help us, right,
yep.
buddy?
Oh, Italy. Of course, it's
Italy.
Italy. And there you go. The pig nations. They were in a very, very bad situation with the euro, and it was looking like bank closures and the euro starting to die. In 2011, you saw Bitcoin scream up, you saw silver and gold scream up, and that was really the reason why. And but there was manipulation by JP Morgan because of they're going, or not JP Morgan. Yeah, it was JP Morgan. They took over from Bear Stearns. So they're saying, well, yeah, we make a lot of money when silver goes down. Let's figure out how to make a lot of frickin' money when it goes up. So they spoofed it and they helped it go up. I mean, actually, this has been proven, folks. I'm not saying anything here that is left to interpretation here. So at any rate, those events were happening in 1980, Hunt Brothers, in 2011, Pig Nations, JP Morgan spoofing. But okay, let's go back to the original question and also the underlying currents for the economic situation or environment. When we're in a recession right now. It's being papered over. This is nothing new. I mean, this is how we do it now, apparently. So in a recession, will gold and silver go up? Basically when the dollar apparently is not. So now we had to include the Forex market. So I'm going to take you one step further. Gold is exchanged on the Forex market because it is money. A lot of people don't know this, but on the foreign exchange market for currencies nationwide, when currencies are trading against one another, gold is one of those currencies, just like the dollar, just like the rupee, just like, the peso. They're all in there with gold.
Whoa. I'm going to ask you.
Sure.
I did not realize that. So gold is actually traded on the Forex exchanges?
It is indeed.
Wow. I didn't know that. Thank you, Pat. Sorry I interrupted you, but I think that I would imagine a lot of our viewers, that may be news. To me, that's significant. So thank you.
Yep. Well, I'll tell you what, at least 2-3 years ago, the last time I looked into the Forex market, it was still exchanged there.
Okay. Interesting.
So gold is the real money. Everything else is fake and it trades against it. I mean, that's the way it works in the Forex market. That's also part of the way they can make the dollar look better or manipulate the price of gold, whatever they're trying to do. So the dollar is still on top with all this stuff going on, with the inflation we have in the United States. And oh boy, howdy, are we feeling it? With, basically not just everything costing more, but the threat to the digital dollar. The Fed Now program is going forward right now, right before our eyes. Businesses are being incentivized to drop the dollar, and then you can use your credit card or your debit card, but no more cash, please, or Federal Reserve notes. So that is happening at the same time. Now, the dollar always seems to be on top, despite all this stuff going on, Ron. And that you brought up the stagflation. Why is that? Why is it that the dollar is so pretty on the Forex market? And that's because all currencies are falling at the same time.
Yeah.
But the dollar, is falling at the same rate as everything else. It's going to stay on top. But what it is a race to the bottom. Which currencies will hit the bottom first? And it won't be the dollar. Despite, the gold and silver community, a lot of folks think, oh, the dollar's just going to go away. The euro will take over, the Chinese yuan or renminbi, depending on your vernacular, will take over. No, digital currencies will take over. The paper currencies are finished. So in my view, based on how you frame that, I think that, basically we have to, readjust our thinking. And that gold and silver itself literally is being forced down in those Forex markets along with the paper currencies to keep the dollar looking like the shiniest turd in the box.
Yeah.
And so I know it's a long answer, but I had to frame it.
Pat, that is so, and I'm going to emphasize this again to everyone who's joining us right now. That is probably the cornerstone concept to why people own silver and gold, but also very hard to explain, number one, and it can be challenging to understand. So I want to spend just a few more minutes talking about it, and maybe I can confuse everybody a little bit more, but I think you did a great job of explaining it. I think one way to think about it is, and I want to get your perspective on this, is if I could imagine all the gold in the world and all the silver in the world piled up right over here to the left of me in my basement, right? That's a finite, definite number. There's only so much silver. There's only so much gold. And then that's being compared to a pile of dollars and a pile of euros and a pile of yen, right? Let's just use those three as an example. A lot of the other currencies in the world that that those currencies are being compared to each other. I think one thing that helped me understand this concept was if suddenly the pile of dollars, the pile of euros, and the pile of yen doubled in size, each of them doubled in size, their relationship to each other would remain the same, right?
That is correct.
But you can't double the size of the gold pile and the silver pile.
You can in the paper market.
You can't, right? Good point. But eventually, truth and reality went out, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you would
No,
think
I agree.
it doesn't feel that way over the last 50 years, right?
Yeah.
But eventually, you can only dam a river for so long, you can only hold a beach ball, but they could quadruple the size of those piles of dollars, euros, and they would all still say, well, the relationship, the exchange rate, the dollar's still the strongest, but there's four times more of that paper now, but there's still only so much gold and silver. Does that make sense? Or did I
No, it
confuse
doesn't. But
people?
but once again, we go into nominal confusion with this
Yes,
because
yes,
the futures
yes.
market dictates to us that the Comex has tens of billions of ounces of silver waiting to purchase by anyone, right?
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
way the paper futures market works. Tens of billions of ounces. In reality, they're struggling to keep, single digit millions of ounces in the Comex. And that's the
Yes.
reality. So, but the reality is papered over with basically high ratios in the futures market for gold and silver. How that
Hmm.
ties into the Forex, well, they're doing the same thing with gold,
Hmm.
except silver is far more manipulated in the futures market than gold is. I mean, I can tell you
Yes.
that straight up. There's probably guests that you could have on your show that would
So
go ahead.
I'm sorry, you have me so intrigued here by this conversation. So the way with the example I made, where you've got the pile of the euro, yen, and dollar, and they increase those pile sizes by four, right?
Yep,
Uh, in theory, in a fair market, that would make the value of gold go up by four times.
it
But
would.
the way that they or even if they increased all those piles by, and let's just use the four times example. I think in simplistic terms, you could say that's what they've done since, whatever, 1980, 1970, whatever year you want to start at. The only way they're able to keep gold and silver under control then is to create digital make believe unicorn fart dust gold and silver. But
Paper gold and silver in the futures
paper
market.
gold, yeah, paper. We'll be a professional. Paper gold and silver, make believe, digital fairy gold and silver, and that's how they keep the price suppressed. I don't think they can keep it. They couldn't keep it completely suppressed, but they were able to achieve a moderate degree of suppression.
That's
Is
right.
that right? Okay.
Yes. And the easy way to fix this, and it's been talked about quite a bit for years, is for people to stand for delivery.
Yeah.
Literally,
Right.
physically say, okay, here's my futures contract. It just expired. I'm here to pick up my silver. And
Yeah.
guys, I've got stories about that. I mean, there's lots of stories about that, and from people you know.
Hmm.
But I won't go into their names, but there's a lot of people. Peter Schiff, by the way, stood for delivery back when silver was shoved down to $12. Do you remember that in the futures?
Oh yeah.
And yep. And so of course, Ron, you and I couldn't pick up silver for $12. I mean, even with the premiums, it was about $17. For us to physically pick up silver when it was shoved down to 12 in the futures. But that was basically so banks could get out of their shorts.
Hmm.
That's literally that's the games they play. So if everyone stood for delivery, but they won't, because who are the buyers of these futures contracts? It's hedge funds and banks. They're
Yeah.
playing a game. That's it.
Yeah.
This is a game. How many people like you and I can afford a single silver futures contract at 5,000 ounces? Very
Well,
few.
we could bind together some of the Ron's basement, the basement dwellers. Maybe we could pool our money and see if we could get one of those big bars.
Yep.
I have heard from several what I consider to be very knowledgeable people in terms of that, because I think it's purposely made to be a bit complicated, right? The Comex and the LBMA, and
It is.
and it's really not
Exchange for
that complicated.
physical.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
All the
Yeah.
weird contracts they came up with, because of COVID.
Yeah,
Um,
it's like legal terminology, right? You
yep,
know, words that they purposely make confusing that really aren't that confusing if you take the time to dig into it. But I've heard the several of these people that know what's going on saying that there is a lot of metal that is being sucked out of these Western exchanges and it's moving to the east, whether
hmm
you're talking about silver or gold. So
agreed.
possibly, and as like we started out this conversation with the world changing and the BRICS expanding, and we've got the Shanghai Gold Exchange, the Moscow World Standard, and other
hmm
international markets that are going to start to vie competitively with the Comex and the LBMA. Maybe, we don't make predictions, but maybe at some point the domination by these Western exchanges won't be as extreme as it has been over the
Right.
last 50 years. It could be
That's right.
interesting.
That's
All
right.
right,
And go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, you go ahead.
Well, and to your point, there might be price action because of exchanges overseas, but the LBMA and the Comex are probably not going to acknowledge that. But
Hmm.
once you create a price and actually set a price for gold and silver in a nation, that sets up an arbitrage situation, that anyone can take advantage of, anyone, particularly if there's paper markets for that exchange. This is the danger, Ron. Danger, Will Robinson, danger. If these
Hmm.
exchanges create futures markets, and if they actually hit the ratios like we have in silver, the worst ratio I've ever heard of in the futures market was 525 to 1. So, in other words, 520 paper ounces of silver covering the same ounce of silver that's being held in the COMEX.
Yeah.
So, you could have 520 buyers for that single ounce. And
Yeah.
now, if they do that in their exchanges, I mean, it's silver and gold is just never going to go up,
Yeah.
never.
Yeah.
And so, if they've learned how to manipulate the system, the way the Comex and the LBMA have been doing it for so long, then maybe, basically silver and gold will just have to go up in value because of scarcity. And
Hmm.
that's and that alone.
Yep.
And that's we have that situation right now, Ron, and it's called the premiums. People complain about the premiums with gold and silver. This is the free market literally trying to break through that manipulation price. That's why there are premiums. And by the way, if you were stacking back in 2016, 2017, even into 2018, there was a pretty nice situation going on. I mean, 39-cent premiums.
Yeah. Right.
And that was
Right.
because, basically it wasn't as scarce. It's getting much scarcer. Look at 2015 when the price skyrocketed up to $46 and some odd cents. How did the free market deal with that situation? And that was actually the miners had money and they started high grading the mines. They were high grading everything. And by the way, that creates a precarious situation to go back and low grade, the
Yeah.
mines.
Yeah.
And by the way, for those of you who don't know, high grading a mine means going for the easiest, biggest nuggets, if you will, of silver in the ground. Low grading is getting all the tiny, tiny flakes, and it's a different process, a totally different process. High grading is quick.
Short-sighted.
Yep,
Short-sighted.
short-sighted.
Yeah.
But leaching a mine with low grading is an expensive process, use lots of chemicals, and it takes a lot of money to clean up after you're done. So those chemicals that are used to leach the silver out of soil, if you will. I mean, it's almost like that. I mean, I hate, you should have an expert on how silver is mined, high grade versus low grade. I think
Hmm.
your listeners would really enjoy hearing that, but also the financial differences between the two. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
It's
maybe I took us off on the wrong track here, but
No, 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 no. I just wanted to mention when we talked about the Comex, I like to joke around. The Comex is like the Walmart for precious metals. They like to do price rollbacks,
that they do. Yep. Oh, look out
and
for falling prices.
and people are always and for everybody listening, we're going to get to the gold and silver legislation movement very very soon here, but people are always confused about this difference between registered inventory on the
Mhm.
Comex
And
and
eligible.
eligible. And I came up with we'll have some fun here for a second. I came up with I thought was a pretty good analogy. I said if that means if the Comex were Walmart, like Walmart has a big central warehouse where they store everything, right?
Mhm.
Including, and we'll just say silver as ding dongs because our good friend of the channel, Coin Shop Chris, loves ding dongs. So at the Comex, or I'm sorry, at the Walmart central warehouse, they've got their big supply of ding dongs, right? That's the eligible inventory. That's eligible, but it's not yet in the stores available for sale. The ding dongs they have on the shelf in the store, that's the registered inventory that people could buy. But the important thing to remember is that registered inventory, right? Those ding dongs on the boxes of ding dongs on the shelf, Walmart would then, if they were the Comex, they would be selling each box 30 or 40 or maybe even 300 times over through their
Mhm.
website. Does
That's
that make
right.
sense? Does
Yes, it
that make
does.
sense? Okay.
It does.
Last mention of ding dongs.
The squirrely stuff they do. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really insane. But at the same time, that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
So, folks, nothing is real in the COMEX. Nothing is real in the LBMA because the purpose of having futures for silver was, once again, I don't want to get into politics or anything. Unions started with a great idea, an actual honest to God great idea, but so did futures markets for gold and silver. They started with a great idea, but it's been perverted, severely perverted. And my argument would be that's happened with some of the unions as well.
Yep. And I'll wrap up with this on this subject. I love the fact that you brought up the premiums and, people love to complain about the
They
premiums, but
do.
you could make the argument that actually as a stacker of silver, gold, or platinum, the premiums are actually your friend because that's the pricing mechanism where to a certain degree we can see what the true market value of the metal is at any given time. If premiums skyrocket, and I get this question all the time. It's a subject of great debate, right? That if we run into some economic troubles and the market goes down, that we're going to see silver crash again, right? Down to 16 or 12, like we talked about earlier. And I bring up the point that, hey, look what happened back in March and April when we had a little bit of a hiccup with this banking, a big hiccup that got papered over. The reaction now is so fast that I don't think, and I know most people don't agree with me, but I don't think we're going to see like a big downdraft in the price. And even if we do, there's so many people that are going to come running into the silver market that the premiums will more than make up for any artificial, temporary, phony electronic paper price decrease that we might have.
Yeah. And to your point, again, the premium is more reflective of simple supply and demand, not necessarily rarity. Okay, so everyone needs to understand that that's actually kind of a different section. Rarity is much more accurately reflected in the numismatic markets, but supply and demand is what's addressed with the premiums. So that is much more of a free market than what we have with the Comex. In fact, there's no such thing as a free market with the Comex. Everything's manipulated, and people will challenge me on this, and they're welcome to. And not that I want a lot of emails challenging me on this. I don't have time for that. But the fact of the matter is, JP Morgan has been caught manipulating the price of gold and silver more times than I can even remember, and have paid heavy fines for doing so. So what about the Comex? Have they been caught? No, because the laws have made what they're doing legal. It's legal. And JP Morgan has cover being called an agent of the government. So they have legal protections for manipulating the price of gold and silver. Guys, you got to understand how this game works. I mean, someone recently challenged me saying, Martin, oh gosh darn it, what's his name? Used to be a big silver and gold guy.
Armstrong?
Yeah, Martin Armstrong, is saying that gold and silver is not manipulated, that it's just not manipulated. That is simply false. That is a false statement. There's so much evidence of this manipulation, but some of it's legal and some of it's illegal. Now, the legal stuff is what Martin Armstrong will say, well, it's not manipulated because that's legal. To sell 520 pieces of paper, all claiming 1 ounce of silver. It is legal, Ron. So I'm not saying, but it's legal and the Treasury lets it happen.
Let me, I'm going to interrupt you because I think that's again, another critical thing that I've never thought about. So thank you, Pat. Right. Just because it's legal doesn't mean that it's not manipulation. I mean,
That's
it can
correct.
still be manipulation and be legal. And on top of that, the double zinger on top of that is there's also illegal manipulation going on. And that's been proven by the fact that if our darn government could get convictions on these recently, these JP Morgan traders who are going to jail, that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of illegal manipulation. But like you said, and that's a great, awesome point that I think a lot of the people join us right now may not have. There's also manipulation that's legal. And just because it's legal doesn't mean that it's not manipulation.
That's right. So
Yeah.
if we can remember that in adjusting our thinking about gold and silver, the way I think of gold and silver, and this is me, I know a lot of people are watching and they want gold and silver to go up and they want to make money on their investment and everything. I don't think of gold and silver that way. I think of it, first of all, it's insurance. Number one, do you have health insurance? Do you have car insurance? Why not money insurance? That's what gold and silver is. It's really, it's money. It's money as well, but it's insurance. But also, it's a great way to do savings.
If you're looking to buy gold, silver, or platinum, do yourself a favor and check out Pimbex, the online precious metals bullion dealer and sponsor of Ron's Basement. I was a happy customer before they offered to support the channel. You'll find they have the best prices, quality, and service. I think Pimbex is best, and you will too. And be sure to tell them that you're from Ron's Basement.
Gold and silver are real money. They always have been. They always will be. The world, the big wide world, we talked about this, is moving more toward re-recognizing gold and silver as real money. Individuals throughout the world and even in the United States, growing number of people are, like you just said, realizing gold and silver are at minimum, this is the way I like to say it, at minimum, are a great way to protect your wealth. There's some options that could come through, that could be very lucrative for people that hold silver and gold, but at minimum, it's a great way to store wealth and to insure your wealth and to protect yourself. Now we got the states in the United States, right? A growing number of states over the last 5-10 years. You are I hope you're okay with me saying this, but a real warrior in particular for the state of Missouri in forwarding gold and silver legislation. How do you see that landscape right now? I guess we can talk about Missouri, we can talk about it on a national basis, but it's interesting that we have individual states, right? Kansas, Utah, there's a whole list of them that have passed legislation or are in the process. How do you see that developing? I mean, to me, Andy Schectman says you look at the crumbs and try to put the evidence together. When I hear about states, this growing number of states moving to let their citizens reclaim their constitutional right to use silver and gold as money, to me, that's very interesting.
Well, and I hate to actually reframe it, but in some cases we have to, claw and scratch our way, and we're not being let anything. I mean, we're fighting for it.
Yeah.
And in Missouri is a great example, but there was one man that stopped our bill in the state of Missouri. His name is Dean Plocker, and he's the Speaker of the House in the state of Missouri. Other states got through without any grassroots movement pushing it through, or with very little. So it's different for every state. We have a lot of corruption in Missouri, so we're exposing that corruption. That's what we do. But, the best way to get rid of corruption is to have an honest monetary system, period. End of story. I mean, it's the beginning and end of freeing America from the yoke of the dollar, because the dollar is used to enslave us. And I don't want to get into a big, long thing about that, because actually I can filibuster. I can literally take over of how we're enslaved through the use of the dollar, and how the world is enslaved by the use of the dollar. So taking what I said earlier, the allegory, arguments for insurance or for savings is very, very important for people to understand, because that applies to my thinking, even when it comes to getting gold and silver as legal legislation in the state of Missouri, and indeed in any other state. And this is paramount when we know the dollar is going to collapse. Don't worry, though. The Federal Reserve has a digital dollar ready to go, ready to get all of us on it. But first thing, what they're doing right now through FedNow is creating a cashless society. We've heard about it for years. It's been threatened for years. We have for years been hearing, oh, we're going to be cashless someday. That's happening right before our eyes right now, gang. That's the FedNow program. That's what it's designed to do, among other things. They say they're going to make everything much easier and make everything happen much faster through the FedNow program. The FedNow is literally a way to literally get the cash out of the system.
Can I ask you a quick question? Your opinion on this FedNow system? I love my analogies, but is the FedNow system like the infrastructure that the CBDC can be plugged into?
That's correct.
Let me use this analogy for the listeners, and tell me if you think this is yet another unbelievably great analogy from Ron's basement. Haha. But imagine if you live on the outskirts of a city and you paid $15,000 out of your pocket 10 years ago to build a well, so you would have your own water supply, right? And then all of a sudden one day the city's expanding and some trucks show up and they start digging your yard up, and you go out there and you say, hey, what are you guys doing? And they say, oh, we're laying the new water supply lines throughout your whole neighborhood. And you think, well, that's interesting. I didn't know that was going on. And don't worry about it. It's just, just there for the future. We're putting new, we're expanding the city water system to your neighborhood. And then at some point, because I think where I live in St. Louis County, it's illegal for me to have my own well in my yard. At some point, you get a letter in the mail 2 years later saying you are now legally required to hook onto the city water system. You can no longer use. Is that a good analogy?
That's an excellent analogy, and that's precisely what they're doing. And by the way, there's probably versions of the FedNow program going on all over the West. All over the West. There's probably an Australian central bank version going on in Australia right now. There's probably a Canadian version going on in Canada right now. But it's all the same thing. Get the cash out of the system. Go digital on everything. That's what they're trying to do. And by the way, you can, I'm on Twitter. And I've seen people literally posting pictures on Twitter they're taking with their phone at businesses in their area saying that we no longer accept cash. It's happening, gang. And the banks are incentivizing the businesses to do this. They're somehow benefiting by going to this system. So who's incentivizing the banks? That's the government and the Federal Reserve.
Yep. You can go to Six Flags in St. Louis, the amusement park, and you can get into the park, but you can't use cash. Just to your point, in the last year, they've made it a requirement that if you want to buy anything in the park, you either load cash into this little card or you use a credit card, right? I mean, it is happening. Yeah, it is happening. And I see it more and more in St. Louis County where, restaurants or we're saying, nope, no cash, we don't take cash anymore.
Yeah. So I don't know what else to say. I mean, it's happening. Yeah. And the fact that that's a conspiracy theory, gosh darn it. Ron, if I had a nickel for every time someone called me a conspiracy theorist, and then whatever I said, actually came true. And that's only because I read the documents, I read FedNow. And like I said, that's a big, complicated program, but the end result is the same. No matter how you read it or how many times you read it, it comes down to the same thing, getting rid of cash, period. End of story. That is the purpose of FedNow. Now it does other things too, but that's the main purpose of it.
So go ahead. I'm sorry. No, I was going to say the states are moving to help protect their citizens. What are you seeing in that regard?
You bet. So the states need to actually acknowledge the fact that the dollar is being used to enslave the people. And when you go to a digital dollar and you go to social credit scoring, or in the case of larger organizations such as a state government, a county government, a city government, ESG, environmental social governance. So think of that as the social credit scoring for a business or for a government, even though it's a city government. They can be controlled by the Federal Reserve and the federal government through their digital wallet in ESG. The compliance with ESG will be mandatory. You do exactly, you run your business under these COVID rules. You run your business under these environmental rules. Otherwise, we'll just shut down your wallet, or we'll bring down your score, which will reduce your ability to get, discounts on the supplies you need to run your business, because those guys you're partnered with, you're getting supplies from, are also under ESG and social credit scoring and a digital wallet. And I can go into further that affect you and me more, but I think it's really important to understand that most folks are thinking about, social credit scoring. We see this in China and it looks horrible. We don't want it here in the United States. What they're not thinking of is right now, through FedNow, we're basically starting to get the same thing with businesses that we will be doing business with. If they stop taking cash, and before long, they'll have little cameras in their doorway like they do in China to, get an image of your face to determine whether or not you can even go into that store because you have, a social credit score that's too low. You've been denied access. You can't come in here. You said something critical about the government on social media. Here's your punishment. You can't go anywhere for the next 30 days. But think about it.
You can't buy gasoline. You can't.
That's right.
Right.
That's
Good luck
right.
getting an airline ticket. Right.
Yep.
Yeah, interesting.
Okay. So now let's do a big picture, Ron, before we get into more on legislation. The big picture is, what if your state is under basically the same yoke? Because they have a digital wallet. They're also dealing in digital dollars. And ESG says they have to adhere to these weird policies and procedures. And the World Health Organization is one that we need to be very wary of. I mean, I'm not trying to get into politics, but the World Health Organization has a lot of control over health policy in the United States in the event of a pandemic. That will be tied into ESG and social credit scoring, my friends. This is not good stuff coming down the pike. We need another option in our states, and the federal government is not going to give us gold and silver. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm here to tell you right now, as much as I love Eric Thrasher, and I've talked to him, he's a great guy, and he is SaveTheDollar.org. Not that I'm promoting his site or anything, but he was talking about gold backing the dollar. That's what he's trying to accomplish. That ain't going to happen. The federal government is not going to gold back or silver back anything. They want us digital. They want us under their yoke. They want us under their control. So the only way to do it is to reinstate silver, gold, and silver. Yes, we can have electronic versions, of transactions for gold and silver. The free market has had this for a long time. We can have gold backs. Those are really cool. If you've never seen a gold back, look it up. You guys are going to love it. It's like carrying cash in your wallet.
Here, hold on one second, Pat.
Sure.
Give me 1 second. Here.
Yep.
Yeah, this
Ron's got an example of show and tell. I might have
this
one
is a
here.
gold back. Yeah.
Yep. There you go.
From Utah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So this is, guys, this is much more fundamental than wanting gold and silver to go up in value. This is literally keeping your freedom, your kids' freedom, your grandkids' freedom. People who come after you, basically will need some kind of freedom for transactions. And it won't exist with the digital dollar. There's no freedom there. There's tyranny there. From beginning to finish, it's tyranny. And for people who think, the government loves us and they're going to take care of us and they really do want what's best for us, are fooling themselves. We have seen the manipulation of gold and silver, the inflation that we've been under, which was, because of all the money printing under COVID. I mean, honest to God, folks, and then ratcheting up of interest rates, that's hurting everybody. They hurt us with the inflation, and now they're hurting us with interest rates. They don't care if we're hurting. I mean, it's actually really simple to see from my point of view. It's very simple to see.
Let me throw this in real quick. Sure. If people question whether or not the government's going to take care of them, look no further. The government took care of a certain segment of the population. The government took care of the wealthy.
The one percenters.
The one percenters. If you look back to, let's just say 2008, for instance, and you look at the amount of wealth that's been transferred from the middle class, not to the lower class. No, it was all transferred from the middle class to the top 1%, top 0.5%. The numbers are staggering. And of course, that's not reported to us on the CNN, the Children's News Network, or Fox, or any of the major networks, right? But the reality is Yeah, the government took care of some people. They took care of the wealthy.
They
And
did.
sorry, I had to throw that in.
No, you would be correct, because my assessment actually didn't account for that. And you were absolutely correct. The 1% are always well taken care of by the government. They get all the contracts. They own the companies that get the contracts. They get the tax breaks. They get well served by our government. Yep. But that proves one thing. And if you believe what Ron and I just said, that the 1% are taken care of, we do not have a constitutional republic. What we have is, something much closer to the old definition of fascism, or what people call today corporatism or mercantilism or crony capitalism. Pick your word. That's the government we have here today. And gold and silver does not play well in that environment. It literally breaks that system. This is how you get your freedom back, folks. You have got to literally have real, honest to God money again. It will change everything for the better. And unfortunately, some of the things that we love, like NASA, I'm going to throw something weird out, Ron. I'm going on a tangent now. NASA couldn't exist under an environment of gold and silver as money. There's not enough money to send, stuff into space that way. But there's not enough money to fund our military either. It just ain't there. There's no money for entitlement programs under gold and silver. See where I'm going with this, Ron?
Yeah.
See, the way they expand government and get people under the yoke won't exist under a true monetary system. We can be freed by this. But if people go, oh, gosh darn it, I need my entitlements. Well, this is what I can say. If you do math, and I love math, if you do math for how much money you've paid into Social Security your entire life, and if you did something else with that, for instance, put it in gold and silver as well, you would be much, much better off when it comes time to retire. I can tell you this. Look at the last 40 years, gold and silver. What was gold 40 years ago? $200. That sounds about right. In the $200 range. Now it's 2,000. Yeah. So it's gone up 10 times.
And that's within an environment where there's been a concerted effort to keep the price down.
That's correct.
I need to throw that one in there. Yeah,
but
right.
Silver,
consider that. Right.
Yeah,
consider that.
Yep. But silver, has done basically kind of the same thing. And then if you add premiums on top of it, you're doing even better. Yeah. So this is the. And by the way, and I know it gets kind of political when I bring that stuff up, and I try not to do that, even though we're in an environment of politics. We operate, the Missouri Freedom Initiative, we operate in politics. I mean, that's where we operate, but we don't do the right-left paradigm thing. We just don't do it. It serves no purpose. We just try to appeal to common sense and the Constitution of the United States. Go ahead.
You do, is it a safe assessment? You don't do Democrat, you don't do Republican. I'd like to say this, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but you do truth.
Yeah, that's correct.
You do truth and transparency. Because
truth, transparency, and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Yes.
Yeah, because Pat Holland, and I've failed miserably in talking about your organization during this talk that we're having, the Missouri Freedom Initiative. You do that work basically for free, right? I mean, you do go out of your way to be very transparent, and what you're after is I'm gonna say the truth, I guess, in a nutshell.
That's right. That is correct. The truth, and also freeing the people. Yeah. And it doesn't matter what color skin you have. It doesn't matter if you associate with Republican or Democrat, or if you think you're a dolphin. Right. We don't care. Everyone needs to be served by the Constitution of the United States. Everyone needs to be served by the Bill of Rights. Everyone deserves, and not only deserves, but has a right to gold and silver as money. Everyone. And by the way, we have it. It's beautiful. It's in Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution. But look at other countries, Ron, that don't have the Constitution of the United States. Look at India, where gold and silver, it's part of their culture as how you save for future generations. Yeah. It's a big part of their culture. And in fact, basically, I think it's frowned upon in India if you spend any of it.
Yeah. It's the inverse. It's the inverse of what we have in the United States. Like here, we're the we are kind of the for lack of a better word, the the rebels or the black sheep or whatever, right? Silver and gold stackers. Whereas over there, like you just said, if you're a person who spends your silver or gold or maybe doesn't have it, you're considered, a black sheep. It's a completely opposite situation.
Yep, because this is how you pass on your wealth to the next generation.
Yeah.
And we used to do that here in the United States too. It used to be cultural here too. And what broke us of that? The inclusion of the Federal Reserve.
Yeah. Yeah. Imaginary money,
correct.
right? Look, this is,
Yep.
Whatever. It still blows my mind that you can convert this paper into real metal.
Yep. And that's because people are still accepting it. Faith and confidence is really the only thing that gives value. Ron, if you and I did not pay taxes in dollars would be worthless. It's not even about oil at that point. What gives the confidence for a country to buy dollars or exchange for dollars? I don't know what the terminology is here. In order to buy oil, it's because American people work for the dollar and they pay taxes in it. We fund our government with it. That's what it's all a faith game, a faith and confidence game. And
go ahead. Well, I want to interject this because I thought of this based on what you just said. So yeah, right. Faith and confidence, right? I've heard several people recently say that the biggest asset that our government has is the student loan debt money that's owed to them. Okay. And I've also heard several reports of surveys, right? There was a, whatever you want to call it, a 3-year pause on people having to pay on their student loans because of the health crisis that we had in 2020. And then in October, they're going to have to start making payments again. But that like almost 50% of the people that are surveyed are saying like, I'm not going to pay. I can't afford it. I can't, right. The real incomes have decreased by whatever, 10, 15, probably more, like 20 or 25% over the last year. These people are like, I'm just not going to pay. I'm not saying that's going to catalyze a collapse of the dollar, but what does that tell? Like people are just like, you know what? I don't care. I'm just not going to pay. Do what you want with me. Put me in jail. I don't care. People are like, it is based on confidence, but that confidence is fragile, right?
Yep.
It's delicate. And I'm sorry I had to interject, but you just really sparked that in my mind. Like it is delicate. It is fragile.
Well, and not to put too fine, I say this a lot, not to put too fine a point on it, but the fact of the matter is under gold and silver, that student debt wouldn't even exist in the first place.
Yeah, right.
And we wouldn't have a crisis.
Right.
So the dollar allows for lots of crisis.
Let me go ahead. But I got one more thing I got to say, but go please. I'm sorry. Okay. I keep interrupting you.
Credit card debt. Yeah. Keep an eye on that, gang. We've never seen it so high before. We don't have a good economy. People are living on debt. That's another crisis.
Yeah. Yeah. And think about student loan debt. We live in a country where people go into debt, right? Enslave themselves basically so that they can get an education so that they can enslave themselves further. Like what a system, what a great deal, right? Go into debt so you can work for the rest of your life, paying off the debt that you got into so that you could work for the rest of your life.
That's right.
It's crazy.
It's all headed up by Marxist professors in the colleges too. Yeah. They couldn't be more perfect.
Anyway,
you can't make this stuff up.
No, it's crazy. I apologize. I've interrupted you several times, but you say things that spark me that I just can't help myself. So.
It's the red shirt. It's got to be what it is.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
So let's move, out of that arena into real quick, the thrust, the drive, and also hopefully the complementary move across the United States, not a movement, a revolution of gold and silver legislation for all the reasons we talked about today. Pardon me again. And I think it's a good time for me to point out something that we're doing in the Missouri Freedom Initiative now. We've got a new webmaster. His name is Tom. Great guy. Godsend, actually. And he is actually, and this is an announcement I've made on another YouTube channel, but I'm making it here too. We're actually including forums in our website specifically with other states in mind. We need a central location for states that are running gold and silver, and for the people who support that legislation in their states to come together for, anything from ideas to literally putting together a group of people in one place where they can actually get their people together to support their legislation in their state. And also it serves another purpose. Because of Ron's basement and the popularity thereof, during 2023, when we were running legislation in Missouri, and Ron was kind enough to let us come on the channel and deal with him real time with the Missouri legislature in the state we both live in, by the way, I, as a result, over a long period of time, got thousands of emails asking questions, needing help, trying to get the legislation in their states. And that takes a lot of time to answer that many emails. And I believe every single person got an individual personalized email back to them answering their questions or providing the assistance they needed. But that's really, really tough for me to do. That takes a lot of time. If we have a forum and someone asks a question, boom, the answer can be for everybody. And that way we don't have to work it that way. So we're working smarter this time around in 2024. And we should have, by the way, Ron, because I know this is your next question. When are we going to have the final draft or the rough draft of the silver and gold legislation for everyone to see for the state of Missouri? Because we're kind of the godfather of this. And I talked to Senator Eigel's office yesterday, and I'm pretty sure within 2 to 3 weeks, we should see that legislation, and we can post it publicly so everyone can see it, and they can take it over to their state and literally start the basis of drafting the legislation for their state using ours as a template, a starting point. So that's a big announcement we're making, and it's going to help everyone. And we're also going to have all kinds of resources on this website. All kinds of resources for people to go to if they need additional assistance, or, basically the 10th Amendment Center is a great example. But also any YouTube channel that wants to carry news on what's going on the state's battles to reclaim their right to gold and silver as money will be prominently displayed in the website. Ron, I think you know who I'm talking about.
It'll be my honor. I think that is a great idea, this forum, because I can tell you from my community, I know you were overwhelmed with interest, which is great, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was as well. I just sensed it in the comment section, emails that I got as well, many of which, it was easy for me. I just forwarded them to you. I think a central meeting place for people to support each other in this cause and develop a sense of community within that cause is a great idea. And I'll do everything I can on my end to help support it and to point people in that direction. And I just get a real strong feeling in my bones that it's going to be a raging success. So I can't wait to see, the final product, and when I can then, talk to my audience about going there to learn, to get support, and to help further this cause that, to help us, reclaim our right to use silver and gold as real money.
That's right. And also a limitation on the federal government that they can't go beyond silver and gold. We got the 16th Amendment out of that puppy. And also, we just have to have confidence that it was ratified by all 50 states. That's another story altogether, Ron, we won't get into today, but the website is mofree.org. It's the same website. It's been redesigned. We're doing it from scratch, from the ground up, and the forums are there right now, but they're in a somewhat of an embryonic state. They're being developed, and actually that's going to happen very quickly. And I encourage everybody, and also too, if you want to get on the email list, particularly if you are in Missouri, please get on the email list. And because when we're in the legislative session, if you're not in that email list, and if you're interested in this gold and silver legislation, you are missing out, because everything that we do it goes out by email. And that was born, Ron, out of the censorship that we've enjoyed, unfortunately, from many platforms such as YouTube on our channel. Many people have asked, why aren't you using your YouTube channel? We've been censored too many times there. We constantly get strikes. And even with the, subjects, well, it's different than gold and silver subjects that we've talked about, but we deal with other things too. And that has been something that has forced us to go to Odyssey. but also we're branching out into Rumble, I believe, starting this Saturday. So, people who want to follow what we're doing, but it's not all gold and silver. We do other things in the state of Missouri as well. But if you're in another state, you might want to pay attention to what the Missouri Freedom Initiative is doing. I think you might want to take some of our ideas and try to employ them in your states. And also, we have never claimed to be the smartest people out there, ever. If people have great ideas, we want to hear them. Of course we do. When it comes to dealing with state legislation, and then how we actually operate, basically. And once again, we're not right left paradigm folks. So we deal with even the Democrats, we deal with Republicans. We have Republicans that are just as interesting to deal with as Democrats. And that's just the truth up in Missouri. So, but we want to deal with everyone up there. So that's, thank you for letting me make that announcement, because I think that will be helpful for all the states, particularly ones that want to get gold and silver legislation done. Ron, this all started with you on your channel in February of 2023. You were the only one carrying the news on what the states were doing. So I won't forget that. And I hopefully the other people in other states will see you as a resource as well.
I'm honored that you said that, and I'm flattered that you said that. And I think the world of you. Most people watching will probably realize that you've done just a tremendous amount of work to help further this cause, not just in Missouri but other states as well. So thank you, Pat. And it's been great getting to know you, and thank you for coming on today. You're very intelligent, and every time I talk with you, I learn. I mean, that's how we learn, and this even relates back to your forums that you're going to have open up. We learn from each other. There's if I just stick in my own head all day long, the chances of me learning something new are almost zero. And when I or the people that are joining us right now have an opportunity to hear from somebody else, especially somebody who, and I'm not trying to butter you up, but is as bright and well-spoken as you are, it's a real opportunity to, to open some new doors and to see things a little differently. And that's what we're all here for, to help each other. So I can't wait to see the success of the Missouri Freedom Initiative, but also those forums, as I really have a strong feeling that there's going to be a lot of people who get a lot of help and get a lot of growth from that platform.
Thank you for your kind words, Ron. I'm going to disagree with you on being, me being real smart, but I fake it. I totally 100% fake it. But at any rate, I'll tell you what, gang, one more thing. I'm just going to throw something out there. If you're in Missouri and if you want to partake in gold and silver, we're going to do our first knock and shock operation on January 9th of 2024. It's also known as Gold and Silver Day. And we intend to have a very large presence at the Capitol in Missouri. So if you're inclined to do so, if you live in Missouri, mark it on your calendar. Come join us in person, in real life. These are really fun events. And then, Ron, I want to say one more thing. And this isn't, basically the mutual, association here or anything like that. Your help. And when we're up at the Capitol and you do a live stream and I can call you and let you know about a bottleneck we're experiencing up at the Capitol in real time and call you up and then ask for people to make phone calls has been very helpful. And I hope we can count on your help for that again, to get this legislation, silver and gold, through in the state of Missouri.
Yep. I'll do whatever I can to help the cause. And I want to point out to people too, these knock and shock events are perfectly legal. It's your right as a citizen to go to the Capitol and correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially what you're doing is walking around the Capitol and talking, going to offices of different legislatures, that's what they're there for. They work for you. That's correct. Right? This is perfectly legal. It's actually, it's what George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and Andrew Jackson would want you to be doing. Am I correct in saying that?
I would think so.
Yeah, and Abraham Lincoln, can't forget about him, and going to these legislatures' offices and presenting to them, your thoughts, and in particular, on the gold and silver legislation.
That's right. That's exactly what we do. So this isn't a rally. This isn't, there's
no tear gas or anything. I don't want people to think, knock and shot. No, this is professional operation. I'm sorry.
It is. It is, but it's not corporate. It's very organic.
Right.
So I'll develop a flyer, and that flyer I print it out myself, and I bring up, a big stack of these flyers to hand out to the groups for knock and shock. And what they do is they go around in large groups and literally stuff themselves into a legislator's office, either a representative or a senator, and literally talk to the silver and gold bill and have a discussion with them. They want to get their feedback too. So it's not like we're shoving something down a legislator's throat. Nothing could be further from the truth. We're having a conversation. Yeah. But of course, there's like 30 of us and there's one of them, so we have a captive audience.
Right, so, make sure you wear your red shirt. Okay. That'll bring you good luck.
Yep. Wear the red shirt. That's right.
I'm going to get one of those. I'm going to get one of those fancy vests next time we're on. I'll have one on the bear for you. Right
there. You go. Yeah. I have a silver and gold paisley vest that I wear along with ties when I go up to the Capitol for knock and shock, of course, supporting gold and silver.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what we do. There's nothing more to it than that. It's just we're going up in large groups and we're advocating for the gold and silver bill with legislators. And we're also giving them a print, a handout so they remember us. It's kind of like a commemorative memorabilia for that legislator to remember that the Missouri Freedom Initiative was there to talk about the silver and gold bill. So we have the information that we're conveying that day for that knock and shock operation in a very nice flyer, full color. And so,
what might be, and this is just an idea that popped into my mind, but what could be cool is if the guys from Goldback gave you like some Goldbacks that you could, staple on there. They wouldn't want you to staple them, but so you can say, here you go. Here's a
idea may be employed.
And here's
so
a gold
I'm not in direct contact with Alpine right now, but I'm talking to other people right now. So at any rate, that actually may be happening on the 9th.
Oh, interesting. Yep. Thank you, Pat. It's always so awesome to talk with you. And, I hope you're a fan favorite. Everybody who's joined us today, I'm sure has benefited as much as I have. So thank you from everybody in the Ron space, all the basement dwellers, including me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron, for having me back. And remember now, red shirt solidarity here. Susie, I think this is going to continue on. I think, bald guy economics might come on with a red shirt next. And, we'll coin shop Chris, if he ever comes on the channel, will be a red shirt. And Susie, I hate to say it, but the numbers are not in your favor, Susie. Poor Susie.
I'm gonna let you fight. I'm gonna let you fight that battle, my friend.
Yeah, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's funny. Thank you.
Yeah, my wife is, she's actually a black belt in 3 different disciplines. So I've kind of learned from her, to be very careful how you tread. And so, Susie, I'm sorry for anything I just said, and particularly if you're into martial arts. But I will say one more time, the gold bear and the platinum bear are going to start getting chilly in the mornings here in Missouri.
Yeah.
So they need a red shirt is all I'm saying.
Yeah, well, you know what? There's a reason why I'm in the basement. That's all I can say.
Okay, gotcha. Well, I'll tell you what. Yeah, I'm in a basement too right now.
Oh,
and
okay.
Susie, we're gonna, politically, we're, a big group here, and we might have to start some kind of, petition or even a demonstration to save the red shirt.
That's right. Save the red shirt. We'll see you soon, Pat. Thank you.
Take care, Ron. God bless you. Thank you.